It's very dangerous out there. We need a great barrier. We're going to have a shutdown. There's nothing we can do about that.
After the show on Friday night, I went out there and noticed there was some helicopter activity around the property. There was further helicopter activity the next day. And so I figured that clearly somebody out there listens to your program.
Another mystery buried deep in the hills of eastern Washington keeps resurfacing. A bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal. KOMO 4's Denise Whitaker heads east in search of the hole.
Out in the middle of nowhere in eastern Washington, there's a mystery that is as chilling as it is mind-bending. Mel's Hole. Now think of this, a pit so deep no one's ever found the bottom. Not even close. Mel Waters had stumbled across it by chance, but what he discovered has since spiraled into a legend filled with strange sightings and government shutdowns. What's actually down there? People have tried everything to uncover its secrets, sending cameras and equipment into the pitch-black depths, only to get back haunting, inexplicable footage that's kept even the toughest scientists up at night. Paranormal activity, strange sounds, objects disappearing without a trace. It's all been reported. And here's something shocking. When word of Mel's Hole reached Donald Trump, he supposedly had it shut down. Why? To keep the lid on whatever's down there? To protect us from what might crawl out? Secrets of the bottomless pit. In a remote corner of eastern Washington, there's a mystery that refuses to be solved. It's a strange, bottomless hole hidden among the hills, and it's been baffling people for years. Known as Mel's Hole, this pit has captured the attention of locals, adventurers, and even curious researchers. What's even stranger is that the deeper they dig into its secrets, the less they seem to understand. And when a camera was lowered into its depths, the world was left reeling from what it saw. This odd pit sits on the Mellot property, west of Ellensburg, on Manistash Ridge. At first glance, it's just a large hole in the ground, about 9 feet across, surrounded by a stone wall. But here's the twist. It doesn't draw water like a well, and it doesn't seem to have a bottom at all. Over the years, people have used the hole as a dumping ground. Everything from old tires to broken equipment has been tossed in. But the strangest part? No matter how much gets thrown in, the hole never fills up. Mel Waters, the landowner, couldn't resist the pull of the mystery. He wondered just how deep the hole really was. So one day, armed with a fishing line, Mel started lowering a weight into the hole. He kept lowering it over and over. After unspooling more than 4,500 feet of fishing line, the weight still hadn't hit bottom. What he found next will make you wonder, how can a hole go on forever? But it wasn't just the depth that made Mel's Hole so strange. His dogs, normally fearless, refused to go anywhere near it. They acted like something invisible was keeping them away. And Mel started hearing weird noises on his radio when near the hole, like strange signals or nothing at all. It was as if the hole didn't just affect the ground around it, it changed the very air. Then a neighbor's story sent chills down Mel's spine. After losing his dog, the man threw his body into the hole. A few days later, the same dog showed up, alive, wearing its collar, but acting completely strange. Could this hole actually be a doorway to another world? The more Mel learned, the less he understood. By 1997, the story had grown so strange that Mel decided to reach out to Coast AM, a radio show famous for exploring the paranormal. Mel hoped that maybe, just maybe, listeners would be able to shed light on the mystery of his hole. What he didn't expect was for the story to explode into something much bigger. When Mel first spoke with Art Bell, the host of Coast AM, the phone lines lit up. People from all over called in with wild theories, everything from UFOs to ley lines to ancient gateways. But then things took a bizarre turn. The day after Mel spoke on air, he returned to his land to find military vehicles blocking his way. Armed guards told him he couldn't pass. They claimed a plane had crashed on his property, but there was no wreckage. That was just the beginning. Helicopters started buzzing around Mel's land. Then a neighbor saw something no one could explain. A beam of dark light shooting up from the hole, cutting through the clouds. This wasn't an ordinary beam. It was a dark, unnatural light, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. People speculated the hole could be linked to strange events in the area. UFO sightings, mysterious disappearances, and unexplained sounds. Was it a doorway to another world or something even stranger? Things took another turn when Mel shared that the military had stepped in even more. They offered him $3 million a year to leave the country and never talk about the hole again. Mel took the money and moved to Australia, but after 2 years, he couldn't shake his longing for home. Could the truth behind Mel's hole be so dangerous that it forced him into hiding? The mystery of Mel's hole still lingers, unanswered. What's at the bottom of that pit? And why has it attracted so much attention? The hole remains one of the most puzzling and chilling mysteries to this day, a question that still has no clear answer. Mel's curiosity about the hole never faded, and neither did his determination to uncover the truth. Despite the risks, he couldn't stay away. After 2 years in Australia, Mel felt a strong pull to return home and visit his family, all while planning to share more details with Art Bell's audience. But what happened next would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about his mysterious hole. Little did Mel know his return would set off a chain of events that would spiral into chaos. Mel's quest to find the truth. Mel knew he wasn't supposed to go back. Everyone had warned him, but he shrugged it off. He figured it couldn't hurt to visit his family and share more of his bizarre story on Art Bell's radio show. On the day Mel was supposed to go on air, he was on a bus heading to visit his nephew. Out of nowhere, an argument broke out between the passengers. It escalated fast, and before he knew it, the police were showing up. They questioned everyone and moved them to another bus, like something out of a movie. But that was only the beginning. Mel didn't know what happened next. One second he was on the bus, and the next, he blacked out. When he woke up, he found himself in a San Francisco alley, confused, disoriented, and terrified. 12 whole days had disappeared from his life. 12 days, gone without a trace. His wallet was missing, his arm was sore, and when he looked, there were needle marks on his skin, like someone had hooked him up to an IV. To make things worse, his mouth tasted like blood, and when he checked, some of his back teeth were gone. It didn't make sense. How could this even happen? Things only got stranger. Mel never made it back to his land. Instead, he found himself tangled in legal trouble, accused of building houses, roads, and developments he didn't remember creating. The government had taken over his land for 2 years, but none of that mattered now. Mel lost everything. Then, just days after trying to reconnect with Art Bell, he found his bank account had been drained. It was like someone was erasing his life, piece by piece. People started calling him a fraud, saying his story was made up. But Art Bell wasn't so quick to dismiss him. He invited Mel back on the show, eager to hear more. That's when Mel revealed something even crazier. A TV crew had gone searching for his infamous hole. They didn't find it, but they discovered signs that the military had been active in the area. It was starting to look like there was more going on than just a hole in the ground. And just when it seemed like the story couldn't get any stranger, the government suddenly restricted air traffic over Mel's land. A no-fly zone expanded, and satellite images of the area were replaced with a black square, completely blocking the view. Some people claim Mel had just seen that black square online and made up his whole story. The catch? The square didn't even show up until 6 months after Mel's first appearance on Art Bell. How could he have known about it? Then, just when things seemed like they couldn't get any weirder, a Native American tribe from Nevada reached out to Mel. They had their own mysterious, bottomless hole and thought Mel might be able to help them understand it. Intrigued, Mel agreed to meet them in Nevada. This new hole wasn't on Native American land, but in a public area. The Basque people, who had settled there in the 1800s after migrating from the region between France and Spain, believed the hole was sacred, something that had been there for at least 200 years. The hole was about the same size as Mel's, roughly 9 feet across, but with one major difference. It had a strange metal ring around the edge. Unlike the stone border of Mel's hole, the metal was unlike anything they had ever seen before. And when Mel dropped a tool onto it by accident, the sound didn't echo. It was like the noise just vanished. What kind of hole was this? Mel and the Basque decided to run an experiment. They lowered a bucket of ice about 1,000 feet down into the hole while keeping another bucket on the surface for comparison. The ice on the surface melted, but when they pulled up the bucket from the hole, the ice was completely solid, like chunks of salt. It wasn't cold, though. It was dry, and when they tried to melt it with fire, it didn't melt at all. Instead, it caught fire and burned for months. How could ice burn? What was going on here? Intrigued but cautious, they repeated the experiment, trying different amounts of ice. Sometimes it melted normally, but other times it turned into that same strange, flammable substance. As the mystery grew deeper, someone suggested they go down into the hole themselves, But the others quickly shut down the idea. They agreed it was too dangerous. So they came up with a different plan. They would lower a sheep into the hole. Sounds insane, right? But they were serious. The only problem? The sheep refused to go anywhere near the hole. It fought every step of the way, resisting as if it somehow knew that whatever was down there, no one, human or animal, should ever see. Something was waiting in that hole, and it was clearly not meant to be found. What did the experiments finally reveal? It all started with a simple experiment, lowering a box with a sheep into a deep hole in Nevada. The plan was to send it down about 1,000 feet, but then something strange happened. The rope stopped moving. Everything around them felt different, like the air had shifted. A low humming sound filled the space, and the team couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. After what felt like an eternity, they decided to leave the sheep down there for half an hour, hoping whatever was happening would pass. When they pulled the box back up, everything looked normal at first glance. But when they checked the sheep, their hearts sank. It was still, lifeless. It was as though the hole had taken something from it, something they couldn't explain. The Bosque people, experts when it came to sheep, were called in to investigate. They cut the sheep open, and what they found inside was beyond words. A massive tumor, almost the size of the sheep's body, was growing inside it. But here's where it took a turn for the bizarre. The tumor was moving. Everyone stood frozen, unsure whether to back away or dig deeper. With no other choice, they cut into it, and what they found next sent them into shock. Inside the tumor was a creature, a baby seal-like thing, connected to the tumor by an umbilical cord. But the eyes? They were unmistakably human. The creature wasn't done yet. It moved on its own, crawling to the edge of the table, looking as though it was trying to return to the hole. It felt like a moment frozen in time. Mel, sensing what had to be done, picked up the creature, slimy and strangely fragrant, like the air after a heavy storm, and placed it near the hole. They all just watched in silence as it did the unthinkable. With one last glance, it leapt back into the hole. Before this event, Mel had been gravely ill, diagnosed with a serious cancer in his throat, with little hope left. But after this incredible encounter, something unbelievable happened. His cancer vanished. Could that creature have healed him? Mel believed it without question. That experience had changed him, mind and body. It was like he'd stepped into another world and come back. He wasn't the same person anymore. A few months later, Mel returned to Art Bell's Coast to Coast radio show, bringing even stranger stories. One of the Bosque people had taken a chunk of the strange burning ice from the hole into his cabin to keep warm. But this wasn't just regular fire. It never went out. The ice burned on for months, creating an eerie effect on the air, sucking up all the moisture, leaving the man constantly thirsty and with dry, cracked skin. It was as though the fire itself was alive, draining everything around it. Even boiling water wasn't normal. The steam just disappeared into the air. Eventually, the heat from the ice caused the wood stove to fall straight through the cabin's floor, as if the earth itself couldn't hold up under the pressure. The cabin eventually collapsed into dust. But it didn't stop there. The Bosque people shared stories of their connection with the creature, calling it a spiritual guide, a being that had somehow reached out to them in a way that went beyond understanding. They believed the creature had shared wisdom with them, teaching them about the hole's deeper, hidden powers. And then came the birds, vividly colored, fearless, and unlike any other. They flew around the hole without fear of danger. To the Bosque, these birds were a sign, a blessing, something magical from the creature itself. The mystery deepened when the Bosque claimed that the creature had been communicating with them over the radio, not through words, but through beeps and clicks. They were convinced these sounds weren't random. They were messages. The creature was warning them about the dangerous power of the burning ice, telling them that it could destroy it if it fell into the wrong hands. Art Bell, always seeking proof, pressed them for evidence. The Bosque insisted they had recordings of the strange messages. Art's curiosity was piqued. He knew the story needed proof, something to back it up. He asked Mel to bring any photos or recordings he had. But just when it seemed like the truth was within reach, Mel disappeared. His phone went silent. No more messages, no more calls. It was as if he'd vanished off the face of the earth. 5 years later, the story of Mel's Hole had become a legend, a strange and haunting tale that refused to fade. Fans and explorers tried to find the hole, but every lead fell apart. One group thought they had found it, located on a farm with 2 old buildings, one of which had collapsed just like Mel described. But when they got closer, They realized it was just an old well. The hole, it seemed, had slipped away once again, like a shadow fading into nothing. As for Mel, no one could find a trace of him. There were no records of a man by his name living in the area. Some speculated he used a fake name to protect his identity. But the biggest mystery of all was the lack of physical evidence. Despite all the strange events, no one had ever produced a single photo, a video, or anything that could confirm the hole's existence. Every time Art Bell asked for proof, Mel had an excuse. Either the cameras wouldn't work due to interference, or he simply forgot to take photos. He always promised to bring evidence, but never did. The one thing that stood out, though, was that Mel never tried to profit from his story. He didn't sell books or fake photos. He didn't make money off his tale. If he wanted to, he could have sold out and capitalized on the mystery, but he didn't. Some believe the story had gotten too big for him to handle, causing him to disappear. But Mel never wavered from his original story, even when Art Bell pressed him for answers. Was there really a hole in Nevada that went on forever? Was it a portal to another world, or just a figment of Mel's imagination? Even Art Bell, who loved mysteries, couldn't help but question it. But one thing was clear: Mel's hole had become a legend, and no matter how hard anyone tried, the mystery would never truly be solved. In 2017, a group of adventurers set out to find it once and for all. They followed coordinates they found online, leading them to a farm. When they arrived, they stared into a hole that seemed to stretch forever. They threw rocks into it, but they never heard anything fall. As they filmed, they caught a glimpse of something watching them from afar. The tension was thick. Before leaving, they filmed a beetle falling into the hole, a symbol of the mystery that keeps pulling people in. Even now, no one really knows what's down there, but the hole remains as captivating and elusive as ever. So what are your thoughts on this? Is Mel's hole just a creepy legend? Or is there something more sinister hiding in the Washington wilderness? Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more eerie stories. Thanks for watching.